Number 10. The Flower Cartel. This one might be lesser known as they are relatively new. Not just an enemy to Wolverine either, but an enemy to likely all of mutant kind and the mutant nation of Krakoa. The Flower Cartel are a group responsible for smuggling the Krakoan miracle flowers, which mutants use to create medicinal drugs for the world in exchange for the global acknowledgement, rights, and respect of their mutant nation. They don't just steal these flowers, but have been using them to create recreational, potent, hallucinogenic drugs. The drugs they've created are so powerful that they often cause the death of users, and may even be affiliated with mind control or possession of those exposed to the drug. We're not really sure yet. In Wolverine's newest series, he teams up with CIA agent Jeff Bannister to try and find out who exactly is behind the Flower Cartel's criminal activities. Number 9. Hobgoblin. I think we all know Hobgoblin fairly well, if you're a Spider-Man fan that is, but did you know that he also tussled with Wolverine and the X-Men? This altercation went down in the Spider-Man animated series from the 90s, where actually Mark Hamill himself voiced Hobgoblin. We see Wolverine, the X-Men, and Spider-Man forced to deal with Hobgoblin in the season 2 episode titled Mutants Revenge, which is a crossover episode with the 90s X-Men animated series. Yay, I love crossovers. After Beast is kidnapped, the X-Men go out looking for him, which leads them to team up with Spider-Man, who is also looking for Hank. But Wolverine doesn't like Spider-Man, and while these two fight one another, Hobgoblin also sees this as a unique opportunity to attack all of the above parties, causing grief for Wolverine while he attempts to rescue Beast from Dr. Herbert Landon, who also is another random, lesser known enemy of Wolverine's, in that episode anyways. Number 8. The Savage Land Mutates. When it comes to other mutant and even mutate groups outside of the X-Men, people are not always as knowledgeable. If you are just discovering mutant kind now, you may not know many other mutant groups outside of the X-Men, and there's sometimes a villainous counterpart, often led by Magneto, the Brotherhood of Mutants, or the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But there are actually a lot more groups than just these two. There are the Morlocks, who often live in the sewers, and there are the Savage Land Mutates, who generally work with Sauron and are, you guessed it, from the Savage Lands. Mutates are like mutants, but the difference is generally that they weren't born with natural abilities which later activated, or natural mutations, but instead they evolved to become mutated, gaining powers or a physical mutation. The Savage Land Mutates are occasionally enemies of the X-Men and by extension Wolverine, who is a member of the heroic mutant team. They even pop up in the 1988 run of Wolverine in issue 69, where Wolverine knocks a lot of them down in order to get to Sauron. Number 7. Lady Deathstrike. Lady Deathstrike is Yuriko Oyama, the daughter of Kenji Oyama, the man who invented the adamantium bonding process. So you can imagine how personal this feud is. Despite the fact that Kenji mistreated his daughter, Yuriko, after her father's death, would feel differently about him and actually ended up deciding to follow in his footsteps and continue his research. She also aimed to track down the one he blamed for stealing his life's work, Wolverine. Of course, Logan hadn't actually stolen the work, but he was the subject it had been used on to bond his bones with adamantium. Initially, she pursued him because she wanted his skeleton so that she could actually study it in an effort to continue her father's work and relearn the process that he had lost when his research was stolen. Lady Deathstrike would go on to become a dangerous and powerful criminal, upgrading her body and turning herself into a cyborg. She is known for her retractable fingernails, which are razor sharp and laced with adamantium, making them super strong and able to cut through most metals, and most materials in general. Number 6. The Iron Monk. The Iron Monk appears to be a villain sent after Wolverine by the Hand while Logan is being held in prison in issue 108 of the Wolverine series that started in 1988. He proves to be a formidable foe and gives Wolverine a pretty good fight for a few pages. I will say I did enjoy it. The Iron Monk, you see, cannot be defeated by any mortal weapon nor any mortal hand. In the end, Wolverine ends up using the Honor Sword bestowed to him by the Silver Samurai. The Honor Sword was forged out of a meteorite by a demon and seems to do the trick, causing the Iron Monk to be reduced to a wisp of pink smoke and a robe. Number 5. Bloodscream. Bloodscream would end up partnering with Wolverine's other lesser-known nemesis that we talked about on the part 1 of this list, Roughhouse. While many associate these two as being partners in crime, this isn't the only Wolverine villain that Bloodscream has teamed up with in the past. He has also teamed up with Albert and LCD as well, and in the Old Man Logan universe partnered up with both Kraven and Roughhouse in an attempt to help Kraven capture Old Man Logan. Number 4. ABDUL ALHAZRED. Fun fact, did you know that ABDUL ALHAZRED in HP Lovecraft lore is the character credited with the creation of the Necronomicon. Yeah, he is, and as such, he is also acknowledged as being its creator in the Marvel Universe as well. He and Wolverine came to blows in Madripoor when Abdul was trying to take over Tiger's crime syndicate. Abdul attempted to attack Wolverine with a demon, but in the end, Wolverine survived, and Abdul ended up trapped in the same demonic realm his demon pals had come from. Sucks to suck, I guess. Number 3. Silver Samurai. Silver Samurai is a master swordsman and a mutant. He is so confident in his abilities to beat Wolverine in battle that in issue number 1 of the 2020 Cable series, when Logan asks when the two are going to fight one another for sport and entertainment on Krakoa, Silver Samurai responds with, "Is it your intention to give everyone on the island a marker?" in reference to the fact that Wolverine basically just lost to young Cable, and suggesting that Logan himself would also lose to Silver Samurai. Silver Samurai is Kenichiro Harada. Ken's mutant abilities allow him to generate a tachyon field, which he can focus through anything that he pleases. Typically, he chooses to use this on his sword, which basically strengthens it, allowing him to cut through almost anything. And I mean almost anything. I don't think adamantium, but pretty much everything else. Number 2. Geist. Nikolaus Geist was a mad scientist from Germany working on the side of the Axis during World War II. He was working to create a new type of super soldier for Germany, similar to the United States super soldier Captain America, aka Steve Rogers. Roughhouse was his main test subject, and in the end, Wolverine was the one to free Roughhouse and put a stop to Geist. Geist was also a cyborg, but Wolverine cut off his metal shell in an attempt to kill him. It was later revealed that while he was suspected dead and was incapacitated after this fight, he did however manage to survive. However, soon after, another mutant, Magneto, did kill him, so he dead. Number 1. Roughhouse. Going back again to the days of battle in Madripoor for who would get to be the king or queen of crime, and in effect rule Madripoor, Wolverine found himself allied with Yasan Hoan, aka Tiger. It was also during this time that he first fought with Roughhouse, who made his first appearance in issue 4 of Wolverine's series from 1988. Roughhouse was allied with General Koi, and got his superpowers from either his relation to the mythical race of Asgardians, or from being a mutant, or maybe a bit of both. It's a little foggy. Though they are enemies and remained enemies thereafter, Wolverine did still save Roughhouse from Geist, because experimenting on people in Logan's book is just plain wrong. And I think in everyone's book, let's not experiment on people. Can we all agree on that? Number 10. Father. Father was the only name we had for one of the scientists behind the mad science secret robotics project known as Project Descendant. Father, Mother, and Brother were the code names for the scientists behind the project, which ended up creating a race of synthetic beings deemed as hybrid. Due to the 3 team leaders bickering, the beings they created ended up being released out into the world. Later, the Father would attempt to lure the descendants of these beings back, and would also go on to work on expanding the Deathlock project, aiming ambitiously to connect all the Deathlock versions of superhumans, joining them together to build a better world. It was during this time that he crossed paths with the very secretive X-Force, which at the time was led by Wolverine, who had refused Cyclops' orders to disband the team, keeping it going in secret. Number 9. Brothers of the New World. Wolverine ended up fighting and taking out pretty much all of this group because they kidnapped and killed his friend Lucy, who tried to escape them. They were a cult whose leader, Cry, kept a harem of women at their base. Wolverine set about attacking the cult and killing all of its members right around the time one of the women attempted to escape, who was actually a government agent who had been investigating the cult before being taken herself and added to their numbers of imprisoned women. This group of villains made an appearance during the first story arc of the 2003 Wolverine series entitled Brotherhood. Oh, also they were in part created by Greg Rucka, fun fact. Number 8. LCD. LCD is one of Donald Pierce's creations. She is an android who resembles a little girl and was created to kill Wolverine by self-detonating. However, she did not herself want to die, as she also was a smart android who ended up valuing her life. In the end, she reprogrammed the android doppelganger of Wolverine known as Albert, built to lure the real Wolverine into her trap, and instead would become Wolverine's ally. Number 7. The Collector. While some may now be more familiar with the character of the Collector himself, thanks to the Guardians of the Galaxy Marvel Cinematic Universe films, fans may not know that he and Wolverine actually had some pretty big beef. What happened between these two? Well, Wolverine basically freed thousands of people from a planet where the Collector had them imprisoned. You see, these people were the survivors of planets that Galactus had destroyed, whom the Collector had, well, collected. But you know, to these people, they are being held against their will, as prisoners on a shielded planet. A character named Arya, who kind of looks like a space elf, reaches out to Wolverine, seeking his help to free these people, and he answers her plea, getting into a direct conflict with the Collector later on in this story arc known as The Great Escape, part of the 1988 Wolverine series. Basically, if you want lots of random stories, you need to read the 1988 Wolverine series. Number 6. Tiger Shark. One of the first time these two ever crossed paths, it was one of the most random fights in comics. Wolverine and Tiger Shark originally started fighting because La Bandera, a mutant with emotion, manipulation, and energy manipulation abilities, who mainly uses her powers to make people feel more patriotic and empathic, was fighting Tiger Shark. Wolverine stumbled upon their fight and felt attracted to La Bandera and compelled to help her, mainly due to her mutant ability, obviously. Together the two made quick work of Tiger Shark, and then ran away together, because that's how that goes. Number 5. Daken. Akihiro is more of an ally of Wolverine's currently in the comics. On Krakoa, it seems everyone is given that second chance at family that they've always yearned for, Daken and Logan included. I really love the Wolverine fam actually, they're probably one of my favorite families over on Krakoa right now. But before Akihiro was on Wolverine's side and helping to defend and potentially protect him against other villains, like Omega Red actually, alongside the rest of the members of the family, he was actually attempting to kill his dad, if you can believe that, multiple times. Daken, being the almost naturally born son of Itsu and Logan, has powers very similar to his father. He possesses a healing factor and even bone claws, but come out of his wrists. He also ages a lot more slowly, but he also has the added ability of manipulating others' pheromones, allowing him to control or influence them. He's also really good at fighting. Really good. Number 4. Nuke. Many people forget about Nuke, but he is a lesser known villain in the comics who was actually created by Wolverine during his time as a Weapon X operative. He ended up securing Nuke when he was just a child for Project Homegrown. Weapon Plus, with Wolverine's help, would later drive him insane and turn him into a brainwashed cyborg to be used as a weapon. Even years later, these two still come to blows. During Death of Wolverine, Nuke would accept a contract to capture Wolverine and bring him into Viper alive. This would lead to an epic fight between the two where Wolverine would only end up winning by smashing his own skull repeatedly into Nuke's until he was unable to fight back. Is this the most metal way that a fight has been won in comics? Let me know in the comments. Most metal fights, that's a list we need to do. Number 3. Damage. For those who are unfamiliar with Damage, he's basically Marvel's version of the Terminator. There's a lot of parallels there anyways. He was originally the human Jamie Ortiz. The Kingpin turned him into a cybernetic being after Damage was brought to the brink of death by Punisher. Kingpin later gave Damage cosmetic surgery to make him look identical to the Punisher as well, and used him against Frank Castle, attempting to break Castle and ruin the Punisher's name by having Damage kill a bunch of innocent people. Wolverine and Damage both ripped one another apart in a fight, and when Punisher finally showed up, he finished Damage off by setting him on fire. Number 2. Gorgon. If you don't know the Gorgon and this pretty awesome story featuring him, you should. During the third Wolverine series from 2003, Wolverine ends up getting entangled with the Gorgon when he is attempting to locate Ichiro, the missing son of one of his dead fiance's cousins, who has been kidnapped. I say one of his dead fiancés because I feel like Wolverine's got a few of those. Gorgon is a telepathic mutant who, as his name implies, can turn those who make direct eye contact with him into stone. Gorgon ends up capturing Wolverine and giving him over to the Hand, who brainwashed him and turned him into their own agent. However, Wolverine would later break free of their control and would even go on to kill Gorgon using his own claws to reflect Gorgon's deadly gaze back at him, transforming Gorgon into stone before shattering him. But don't worry, Gorgon would be resurrected later on and return. Gotta love those old mythology references. Comics taking old stories and making them new again, and also never letting people die. Number 1. Ogun. Ogun was once Wolverine's martial arts mentor and a powerful sorcerer and telepath, but later became Logan's enemy after being spurned by Wolverine, joining the Yakuza and going on to kidnap, train, and brainwash Kitty Pryde during the Kitty Pryde and Wolverine story. Ogun even managed to turn Kitty Pryde against Logan, sending her to attack him when Wolverine had come to rescue her. Fortunately, Wolverine was able to break Ogun's control over Kitty. In the end, Kitty fought Ogun but was unable to defeat her former master. monster. However, Wolverine was able to do so. After being beaten but spared by Wolverine, Logan attacked Kitty once more and was killed by Wolverine as a result. Of course, this is comics, so this wouldn't be the last we'd see of Logan by a long shot. Number 10. GEIST. GEIST actually made his first appearance in Wolverine. He first shows up in Wolverine's 1989 series in issue 17. There he is working for the dictator Felix Caradid, who is the ruler of Tierra Verde. But we also learn of Geist's origins in this story, and his long history of villainy. Geist is Dr. Nikolaus Geist, a scientist who initially worked alongside Germany during World War II, even acting as the Führer's advisor for a time, giving him advice on what to do with his prisoners, how to treat them, and where to keep them. I think you know what I'm talking about here. Geist proved that he was truly one of the most vile villains of Wolverine's. Geist turned himself into a cyborg, though not a particularly strong one. He's kind of an old man cyborg. He was more concerned with longevity in his life than any kind of strength. And where his power truly shines is within his mind. Being brilliant, he managed to work his way into the company of powerful people, convincing them to let him act as their advisor or their chief scientist. Geist was also behind the unleashing of another seemingly unstoppable villain of the time, Spore. Spore was pretty crazy, to be honest. Number 9. Cyber. Weirdly, Geist is not the only cyborg enemy of Wolverine. In fact, he kind of has a few of those. I'm actually surprised none of them ever reached out and attempted to start a team all their own, like the Cyborg Wolverine enemy team dedicated to being cyborgs and taking down Wolverine. Sadly, it might be a little too late now, as quite a few of the cyborg-based enemies that I'm thinking of at least have been seemingly perma-killed. However, Cyber, despite being killed more than once, is actually not one of those. He is currently alive in the comics and was last spotted in 2018 in a Ben Reilly comic, surprisingly. Cyber initially was introduced as a Wolverine villain. His first form was fairly unstoppable and possessed powers similar to Wolverine, including retractable claws and a healing factor, because Wolverine villain. But it should be noted, every time he's come back he's been like a little bit different in terms of what his power set is. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to hear about more amazingly powerful Wolverine villains, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. And maybe comment below, and maybe share, why not? Number 8. Mystique. Mystique is an iconic villain for Wolverine, starting out as his enemy way back in the times of the Wild West, just as that period in history was actually ending, circa 1921. The two met for the first time way back then, and although Logan initially decided to trust Raven, she would inevitably end up stabbing him in the back. Something Wolverine would not forget over the years whenever he ran into her again. Mystique isn't a super powerful character in terms of who can hit the hardest, but she is powerful in the sense that she is a master deceiver and manipulator. She has tricked some of the most cunning and brilliant heroes in comics into doing exactly what she wants. She is also super mysterious. We don't actually really even know how old she is, and there are still lots of gaps when it comes to her backstory. Mystique is a shapeshifter who can transform into other humanoid beings, as well as more abstract things sometimes, depending on who's writing her. She can also disguise herself in any kind of garb she so chooses, as often the clothing we see her in is also created via her shapeshifting. Mystique can also alter her vocal cords to allow her to match anyone that she chooses to impersonate, and can even alter her form to match their retina and their fingerprints exactly. Hence why she's such a dangerous enemy to have. Master Infiltrator. Number 7. Lazeer. Lazeer, or Azrael as he is also known, claims to be another form of death, one that we've seen Wolverine face before, and although we don't always see it, Lazeer is an angel of death that Wolverine in theory is forced to face every time he has a near-death experience. Lazeer battles for Logan's life, but Wolverine manages to fight him back each time, prevailing and ensuring his life belongs to him only. However, should Wolverine fail to defeat Azrael, the being would then claim his life and he would die. Apparently. Number 6. Omega Red. I actually feel pretty bad putting Arcady lower on this list. I think he's a pretty powerful and badass villain all in all, but at the end of the day he can kind of be manipulated by others pretty easily, which is what makes him a little bit weaker to me in terms of where I wanted to rank him here. He only recently got his carbonadium synthesizer back after years of being separated from it. Generally, others wielding this important device have made him their puppet for as long as they possess it, hence why it's one of his weaknesses. The latest person to make Omega Red their loyal servant was Dracula, who was using Red to spy on Krakoa. Fortunately, Arcady managed to get the synthesizer back back, which means we might actually get to see more of Omega Red's full potential in the future. Omega Red is pretty crazy powerful while in full control of himself. He can emit death spores, which are lethal and actually kill most people who come near them. He's also an energy vampire, draining others' life force in order to keep himself alive. This can also bolster Omega Red or be a weakness depending on the circumstance. And like many of Wolverine's most deadly villains, he's also a super skilled fighter with a healing factor. Pretty much everyone gets a healing factor. You kinda need it if you're going up against Wolverine and you want to stand a chance. Number 5. Citadel. Despite the fact that Wolverine did later try to help Citadel and likely never truly saw him as an enemy, Citadel resented both Wolverine and Alpha Flight after they stopped him from achieving his goal. Citadel was one of the antagonists in issue 5 of Wolverine First Class, where Citadel was also known then as Weapon Y. Wolverine suspected he was also made by the same people who had put adamantium inside of him, as Citadel had adamantium skin or an adamantium exoskeleton externally instead of internally. Citadel was a soldier who was injured in action and ended up being experimented on instead of being properly treated. He wanted the government to be held accountable and was holding government officials hostage in Quebec, Canada. Wolverine's mission was to deal with the situation, extract the superhuman threat, and secure the hostages. He didn't know that Citadel himself was also a potential victim until it was too late, and the government stepped in to cart Citadel off without Wolverine being able to do or say much about it. Number 4. Sabretooth. Victor Creed might not be an insanely powerful villain in comparison to some of the others on this list, but when it comes to tormenting Wolverine, he's probably one of the best that there is. Not only does Victor possess a similar power set, but he also is generally the one who comes out on top whenever he ends up in a brawl with Wolverine, which is pretty often, especially considering Sabretooth has a habit of visiting Wolverine on his birthday. In fact, in his newly announced series, I'm really hoping Victor still gets that chance to keep up appearances, because he's a great antagonist for Wolverine, and I kinda love that weird tradition of the smackdown on Wolverine's birthday. Not only is Sabretooth bested Wolverine physically, but he's also got a sharp wit and even once devised a plot to hurt Wolverine by pitting him against his son, forcing Logan to drown his son in a puddle in the end to stop him, which ends up somehow being even more heartbreaking than you'd think. Especially considering that son was Daken, and as I said, Daken has been kinda out to kill his dad in the past, so you wouldn't think that would make you sad, but it did. It was pretty sad. Number 3. Romulus. Does everyone remember Romulus? One of the most weirdly epic and yet short-lived villains of almost all time in Wolverine's rogue history. He had this huge buildup, and we went on to find out that he was an ancient villain from prehistoric times, only to find out that this was all a lie and apparently a ruse to distract Wolverine. He was, however, the villain responsible for cutting Daken out of his dead mother, Itsu's womb, and for training him and turning him into a killing machine. He manipulated Daken from day one, helping to turn him against his father, and was the one responsible for helping him to bond the melted down Muramasa blade to Daken's claws. Or at least helped him get the idea. Because, you know, the Tinkerer obviously did that in actuality. I don't even know if Romulus knows how to melt metal. Probably. Number 2. Gorgon. Gorgon is an impressive fighter, as we saw in the previous X-Men series in 2019. In issue number 4, Gorgon is revealed to be a member of the security detail that Xavier, Magneto, and Apocalypse take with them while attending a diplomatic dinner with the other world leaders. Gorgon is asked to hand over his swords at the security clearance gate, as they are deemed too overt as far as permitted security weapons go. But Gorgon actually refuses and goes to respond with, "The problem is that you look at me and you think the blade is the weapon." And later he proves that to be very true. The crazy thing about this issue is that Gorgon doesn't even resort to using his powers at all in the issue, and yet he takes out countless enemies just with his blades and skills alone. His mutant ability is that he turns any who make eye contact with him into stone, hence his name, Gorgon. However, in this issue, all he uses are his 2 blades and his insane fighting skills to defeat multiple enemies. I say defeat because remember, this is Krakoa, so no killing allowed. Maiming through dismemberment of limbs, however, that is permissible, as we see in that issue. Number 1. Ogun. Ogun was was pretty powerful. He was a warrior who Wolverine met in China. He would end up becoming Wolverine's teacher and mentor for years. The two became close enough that Wolverine actually thought of Ogun as a father figure. However, one night when the two were attacked, it was revealed that Ogun had learned how to cheat death, effectively becoming immortal. After this incident, he became more obsessed with immortality, focusing solely on perfecting his technique. Perfection to him was being able to leave his own body and take over the body of others, allowing him to gain more power and in essence remain eternally young. He planned to use this technique on Logan actually, but Logan left before Ogun could attempt it. Later, Ogun would temporarily possess Kitty Pryde, but be defeated by Wolverine. He was even at one point sent to Hell and still managed to return, so he's pretty unstoppable.